Chapter 17. We headed on down the road, driving west to connect to the rocket route of I-5. AC talked liberally about his life, still imagining, I suppose, that the book was about him. But even within the first 2 hours he was starting to repeat his stories. Really, his life could be summed up in a few sentences. Born just after the war, somewhere. He then played American football pretty much the whole of his youth, and in the meantime met OJ while they were at high school together. And AC seems to have followed him from team to team, the Buffalo Bills, the San Francisco 49ers, and even into acting, and, of course, onto television, as part of the legendary low-speed police chase caper. Other than that, he'd lived a fairly uneventful life that mostly consisted of watching daytime TV soap operas and feeding his cats, aside from a few relationships with poor-grade porn actresses, and a couple of years in the 80s where he dabbled in what he called bisexualism. But he never took it up the shitter, he was at pains to emphasize. He'd also worked a few years as a handbag salesman and said it was the happiest time of his life. Just walking to the office, saying hi to the girls, taking those lovely handbags round, meeting the sweetest people. He could have done that job forever, he said, but he was laid off for fucking the boss's secretary in the stationery cupboard. Oh, is that what you call it? I'd said, but I don't think he got it. And anyway, it wasn't very good. It's obvious, really, but impossible to resist. The old ones and all that. Anyway, I racked my brains for a while to try and work it into his claim of being a giver, not a taker, during his flamboyant disco days. You know, the stationery cupboard thing. But I was too tired for that and let it go. There was this one story, though, that he got into just as we were nearing Seattle. I'd mentioned how I'd been there once and had visited Jimmy's grave, and he told me he'd met him around 68 or 69 after a concert in LA. Those wild fucking times, he said. No random drug tests like you have now. Just make sure you don't show up for training looking too red-eyed or out of it, and Coach wouldn't suspect a thing. He was an old square guy from out in the hillbilly east someplace. He thought drugs were for the long hairs and the stoners, and that us footballers never went near those hippie guys. But me and OJ, man, we fucking loved it. Going to the Forum, going to the Hollywood Bowl, Whiskey A Go-Go. We seen all those guys. Saw the Doors, Janis Joplin, the Stones, you name it, we seen it. What about the Mothers of Invention, I said. Never heard of them, he said. But all the big names, we was there, man. Oh, man, that Hendrix gig was something else. The whole lot of us on acid, the crowd just one rolling mass, totally connected to the music. He would hit a note, and I swear every cell in my body would vibrate in tune with it, and the whole thing would build and build and build. Colors and swirls everywhere, everybody's face so shining bright. And those hippie girls, man, you talk about the polyamory thing you got going on now, but it ain't a patch on what we had back then. No AIDS, no STDs to worry about, all of them on the pill and powered by their newfound freedom. And they sure loved a brother. Oh man, if I told you some of those tales, you'd think I was making it up. But me and OJ, we had more action in those few years than a guy like you'll ever have. I can still see him now. He went silent for a while, his eyes appearing to be looking elsewhere, not really focusing. He licked his lips and shuffled in his seat. Anyway, he continued, coming back to himself. So after the gig, me and OJ managed to get ourselves backstage, and there's just fucking groupies everywhere, man, and the room is thick with smoke, and we got high again after like 3 seconds in there. Jimmy's just sitting, strumming his guitar. It ain't plugged in, but he's strumming away and talking to some girl draped across him, like he's talking real quiet in the corner. There must have been 20 or 30 people crowded into this real small dressing room, making all kinds of noise, and he was like the most invisible guy in there, even though he was the star. Just a real shy guy talking quietly to his girl. I wanted to go over and say something, but I didn't know what to say, but he looked up and we just connected eyes for a moment. And, you know, They always talk about the drugs and the whole superstar get-up, but I don't think I ever saw a sweeter or more humble man in my life. And then he came over and started asking me about me, just what I was up to, what I thought of the concert, did I like his playing, what I was going to do the next day, and what I was doing in college. I was like 21, 22, just a kid, short haired and playing football and studying for tests. And here's the world's biggest rock star, leaving some girl behind and asking me about my day and my life. I'll never forget that moment. It was like he just wanted some brother to connect with and talk about something normal for a change. He trailed off, some emotion stirring in his voice, which I forgot to put, and in his throat. We were on the interstate now, the Broncos steadily eating up the highway beneath us. Out the window, the green fields and pine tree hills flashed by, bathed in a glorious sunshine. It had been autumn when I'd been in Seattle, and there hadn't been a millisecond of sunshine the whole 2 weeks. I'd understood all too clearly why so many Seattleites top themselves and get into bad drugs, and why grunge had been born there. But right now it was beautiful. Everything was beautiful. It was a wild and crazy life. It fucking sucks what they did to him, man, said AC finally. Who? I said. Did what? You don't know, he said. You don't know they had him killed, right? The CIA, the government, whoever it was, those fuckers, they just couldn't see a brother with all that power, with all those white people looking up to him. And he was only just getting started, man. God only knows what he could have done with a little more time. The dude was only 27 when they got him. 27 and on top of the world. But he was about to head in a whole new direction. Revolution, man. Spiritual revolution. They couldn't have that. They'd already made acid illegal because they could see what that was doing to people. Tuning in, turning on, dropping out. All of that bullshit money game. And Jimmy was going to take us higher than that. Jimmy was an avatar, man. Came straight out of some other dimension, carrying the word, and the word was love. You ever listen to the lyrics of some of the songs he was working on when he died? Straight Ahead and Hey Baby and all of that? Shit was going to get cosmic, but the dream died the day he did. They killed Jesus and they killed Hendrix. Same way they kill anyone who tries to spread a message of love and peace to the people of this world. So now it's all about the money and screwing people over and getting what you can. But out there somewhere, I swear, there's a version of this planet where people don't do that. Where Jimmy didn't die. And where me and you aren't sitting in this fucking Bronco driving 1,000 fucking miles to go see some other brother who's sitting in jail for a crime he didn't commit either. And just like millions more like him. Because they gotta keep the black man down, man. They gotta keep the black man down. He got broody here, and I didn't know what to say. Because I'm white. What business have I got? Messing with the words of a black man. None. A month or so previous, I might have scoffed at his idea that Hendrix had been killed by some dark, mysterious powers that be. But since OJ had entered my life, I'd learned to be a little more open-minded about these kind of things. Now, maybe the 9/11 nutters weren't so nutty after all. Maybe even they weren't nutty enough, going by what OJ had been telling me. What with his multiple Osamas, and robot Osamas at that, and his claim that the towers had been brought down by all of the above. But still, why is it always got to be some weird, suspicious circumstance when someone famous dies? Yet in our own lives, we can see people dying in similar ways all the time. Why couldn't Kurt Cobain have simply been fucked in the head and decided the best way to deal with his pain was with a shotgun blast to the chin? Why couldn't Diana's driver have been going too fast and lost control in a tunnel and hit a pole? And why couldn't George Burns simply have perished from old age, rather than the conspiracy theorists' weird requirement for bizarre, complicated plots involving KGB assassins and invisible Sasquatch paratroopers and secret government pea-sized UFOs piloted by MK Ultra ants? Sometimes the simple and obvious answer is the correct one, but maybe that's what they want us to think. Also, if only AJ had been driving Diana's car that night in Paris, she'd still be here today. AJ knew how to handle a car chase safely. He knew it wasn't about how fast you were going. Did Diana's driver really think the paparazzi would leap into their vehicle if they caught up? But about how long you kept it going. It was the tortoise and the hare, the mature lover and the schoolboy. AJ was the man I'd want as my chauffeur if I ever had to make a steady and safe, but ultimately futile getaway. AC, he said, apropos of the paragraph above. What? I said. You know my goddamn name. It's AC Cowlings, motherfucker. I laughed. Whoops, sorry, AC. Just a slip of the finger, I swear. How so, he said. There's like 3 inches between C and J. Slip of the mind, then, I said. Anyway, tell me more about Hendrix. That's interesting. Don't want to, he said. He's just like everybody else. White boy can't even remember my name, as though my identity don't matter, as though we all look and sound the same to you. He shook his head and made that kissing, tutting sound again. Shit, he said, but this time with a smile. Chapter 18. The next bit of the drive, and the story, if I'd included it, was mostly just long and boring, with nothing much of consequence happening until we got to Nevada around breakfast time the next day. So what we need is a montage over a suitably road-trippy piece of music. You can choose your own. Probably there'll be a few seconds of me nodding and falling asleep and jerking awake while AC laughs at me. Perhaps that'll be a recurring motif, and sometimes I'll bump my head or drool or do something equally comedic and hilarious. Then there'll be the two of us laughing and talking together, and other moments where one appears to be saying something serious and real, and the other is giving it full support and nodding his head. A shot of us sitting in some highway rest area around sunset, surrounded by beautiful nature, eating sandwiches and looking thoughtfully into the distance, neither saying anything, to give the impression that we're comfortable in one another's silence and having a bit of a deep moment. Lots of shots of the road out the window, everything beautiful and awe-inspiring and making America look great again. Perhaps the route takes us past some of Oregon's famous mountains. Hood and Adams spring to mind, although I'd have to check a map and see if that's the case, and I don't have internet right now, so I can't. But anyway, it doesn't matter either, because in road trip montages, geography goes out the window. And so I may as well just use the same old sequence they always use when someone's driving across America. Oh, look, there's Monument Valley. Oh, look, the Grand Canyon. Oh, look, a long, mournful freight train trundling alongside Route 66 and the lights of Las Vegas and the St. Louis Arch and Mount Rushmore. A big high bridge over the Mississippi, and the two of us looking out and pondering the mudflats, and everything so deep and meaningful. Stop for petrol at some mom-and-pop gas station, straight out of the 50s, probably in Alabama, and get served by a friendly or mean gas pump attendant, depending on what the plot requires. Now the Golden Gate Bridge, now Big Sur and the California coast, and now some blonde-haired surfer dude in his VW camper, and a couple of modern-day hippie girls, call back to AC's Hendrix days, smiling at us and waving as they pass us by. Driving across America is the best thing ever. That's why all the truck drivers who do nothing else are so constantly ecstatic and enlightened and wise. The land enters their eyes and fills their souls, and their heads contain only divine bliss and an unconditional love for the whole of existence and mankind, the kind of supernatural peace and understanding that a Buddha or a Jesus could only ever dream about. Is the song over yet? I can feel a fade-out coming on. And what do you know? Just in time, a sign saying welcome to Nevada, and a stretch and a yawn, and we're ready to get back with the action. And we haven't wasted any time shitting or pissing or having a wash or checking into that Boise motel and filling in cards and handing over our details and sleeping and waking up and showering and brushing our teeth and all that. "Now then," said AC, looking at his watch, "I must say we're about 4 or 5 hours ahead of OJ's schedule. That's why I was..." "Sure, schedule. Either. Take your pick. That's why I was making such good time yesterday, despite the scenic detour. And that means it's all going perfectly according to plan, and time for AC's special treat." He laughed and licked his lips and shook his head, and then nodded, and then said "yup" a few times, and laughed some more. And then he rubbed his belly, and then he shuffled in his seat, and then he looked out of the window for a while, and though he was facing away from me, I could tell he was simultaneously thinking of how to frame his next set of words, while also remembering relevant times from the past, and projecting into similarly related times in the near future. I could tell these things because I was making them up, because he was a character in a book I was writing, and because I was in charge of everything he said and did, despite him also being a real live person, sitting out there somewhere in the world, completely ignorant and unaware of these current and often quite silly goings-on. But what if they were to meet the two of them? What if the real AC in the actual world somehow found his way into this book, and they had a showdown? What would they say and do? Would it be fireworks and a fight? Or would they get on famously? Two great chums, presumably with so much in common. Maybe they'd have a kiss. Maybe a love scene. Maybe something tender and long and weird. The author nods his head and stores it away for some possible future occurrence. Though mainly he thinks that's probably enough of that line of thinking, that the purpose has been served. "So," says AC, turning back to me, hands as ever decidedly on the wheel, the old Bronco steadily plodding on down the road, 65 miles an hour all the way, no more, no less. "What I'm thinking is we should make a little stop-off. There's a place round here I always like to visit when I'm in this neck of the woods, and for a guy like you, I think it'd be right up your street. This is a one-off place, man, a real unique environment." You like stories, right? And to write stories, you've got to have experiences. Well, this may just well be the experience of a lifetime. He stopped for a while. He was building up to it. I'm not sure why he was so hesitant or milking it out or whatever he was doing. I mean, it's not like I didn't know what he was going to say. "Here we go," he said. And unbeknownst to me, the Bronco had turned off the highway some time ago, headed down a long dusty desert road, and delivered us to a large complex of gaudy white adobe buildings, all strange turrets and domes, like some sort of Bedouin oasis settlement, but with pink and turquoise neon signs and flags flying high. He trundled through a large arched gateway in the wall and pulled into a parking lot where about 7 or 8 expensive shiny cars sat in curious juxtaposition to the scraggliness of the desert around us and the weird hodgepodge of the buildings and the turrets. There was a Rolls and a Jag, 2 Bentleys and an Aston Martin, and a few other makes I didn't recognize, but which I figured were also probably English or at least European. We got out of the old Bronco, looking mighty out of place, and I looked around at all these doors and windows and staircases disappearing off every which way into the who knows where. It reminded me of Marrakesh or an old monastery in Greece. It was a fantastical place. I figured I was probably sleeping or having one of my dreams. "You might have to pinch me," I said to AC. "There's no way this is real, and all those English cars are a dead giveaway." But I walked over and saw that the license plates were all out of California, and the letters and numbers were in perfect sharp focus and didn't wobble or change. It was even more tangible and vivid than the whole Canada vision that had helped get me here in the first place. And with that one, remember, I was also aware of where I actually was, lying there in my Leeds bed and able to flip between each reality at will. But now... "You can imagine you're dreaming if you like, Limey," said AC. "But as far as I can tell, it seems real enough to me." He walked on over. He gave me a little tap on the arm. Not enough to hurt, but I felt it, sure enough. I tried to pinch myself, but it didn't cause any pain. Pinching only hurts when you're a kid, said AC, but if you want to feel some pain, I got something for you. He reached around to his back pocket. He pulled out a small, shiny silver star, flat and with points all around it. What is that? I said. I recognize that from somewhere. Hold out your hand, he said. Why? I said. Just do it. I lifted it gingerly towards him, and then, before I even registered him moving, he stuck the star lightning fast into the meat of my palm and put it back where he'd got it. Ow, I said, because that's what people in my culture always say when they experience, or imagine they've experienced, pain, even though it makes no rational sense to constantly resort to the same word or words when uttering something so seemingly spontaneous and involuntary and unconscious. Shuriken, he said, Japanese throwing star. You never know when they're going to come in handy. Shuriken, I said. Well, I'm sure I can feel that prick you just gave me. I put my hand to my mouth and sucked the blood. It tasted real nice. It tasted just like my blood always did, and was the deep, deep red colour I've come to know and love, a much better and deeper red than most people's blood. The pain felt real enough, the blood looked real enough, and that prick was real enough for sure, so I guess, someone said prick? I heard a woman's voice say. I can't do a woman's voice. I whirled around. A woman about 50 wearing a long flowing gown was floating across the lot towards us. She put her arms around AC and gave him a big kiss on the lips. AC, my love, how the devil are you? It's been too long. We've missed you. But my, you're looking fine. I swear you get younger every time. Ah, Missy, said AC, it's good to see you. And he gave her a big hug back, and then the two of them locked arms and turned to face me. And who have we got here? Said Missy. What a sweet little face. Look at those eyes. Like butter wouldn't melt in 'em. What do you say, sugar? Would butter melt in those eyes of yours or not? I scrunched my brow. I was a man who liked to mix metaphor. Of course I was. But I couldn't tell whether she was doing it on purpose or not. He's English, said AC. Usual thing. He's been conditioned to think we don't do that clever old satire and sarcasm they have over there in the UK. Oh, English, exclaimed Missy, clearly delighted. I just love your accent. And then they walked off, arm in arm, laughing their goddamn heads off, while I stood stupid in amongst the cars thinking, but I haven't said anything yet. And then I got the joke. Come on, AC called over his shoulder. Time's a-ticking, and Missy here's probably already got the meter running. More laughter from the pair of them, and I shambled after them, wondering what he meant. More weirdness, more confusion, more still wondering whether I was awake or dreaming or alive or dead or what. Chapter 19. It was a brothel, of course. The clues were all there. Nevada, the outlandish building in the middle of the desert, the appearance of the madam, the rich Californians' cars, and, as AC explained, it wasn't just any old brothel. It was the brothel of brothels, the secret upmarket sister of the world-famous chicken ranch that all the plebs went to. Whereas this one was strictly invitation only, and not only frequented by only the rich and the famous, but only known to them also. Which is a lot of onlys for one sentence, 4 out of 14 words at one point there, but, as ever, is something we can look at, fixing in the mix, if we ever get round to it. Which I already know we won't, and you already know also. Otherwise, how would you be reading/listening to this? Anyway, AC and Missy led us into a large, high-ceilinged chamber lavishly furnished with plush couches and gold-framed paintings and mirrors, an enormous chandelier dangling down into the middle of the room and twinkling in the sunlight that shone in through the glass dome in the roof. Again, it was a stereotypical setting for a stereotypical scene. Already you can imagine the whole thing, and even the bevy of beautiful prostitutes that you think are going to come parading down a curving staircase that I haven't said is there. It isn't. To be looked over and assessed and maybe described by Missy while AC and I nod approvingly like we're shopping for meat. You goddamn misogynist. When it wasn't like that at all. I don't know why you would think that way about us. We're not that type of men. Probably you're even imagining some of the prostitutes' backstories, the troubled ones, the ones who maybe don't want to be there but have no choice, the ones who plot to get away and do something better and different with their lives. Do you think they're being coerced, or drugged, or being held prisoner? Again, it wasn't like that. They were a happy bunch, all sisters playing and living together and making a ton of money while being treated like royalty by the Hollywood elite. No sleazy old politicians allowed in here. Nobody forced to do anything they don't want to do. No Rudy Giuliani slobbering over you, feverishly grappling with his pants, grunting fat guts and minuscule penises into you for 30 seconds and calling you whore and then crying because in their heads they've just angrily fucked their mothers. They wouldn't be allowed. They wouldn't pass the test. Giuliani wouldn't even be granted the honour of snuffling his trout in the slops and scraps they toss from the kitchen bins. Trump neither. He may well have been the temporary president, but these girls were well out of his league, in all ways except financial, and finances clearly weren't a concern for Missy and her crew, which is probably why he fucked that really dirty porn actress and got those Russians to piss on him. And obviously, having said all that, the whole setup was completely and utterly out of my league too. It wasn't even the same sport. It was the Barcelona of Iniesta and Xavi and Messi versus an Alabama mongoloid who could just about hold a horseshoe, but couldn't even throw it 2 feet, never mind hit the peg. So you have to wonder what the hell we were doing here, this odd twosome of dirty failed Yorkshire hack typist and an unemployed septuagenarian handbag salesman. But AC just winked at me and raised his champagne glass and intimated up to the heavens, which by now was becoming the universally acknowledged symbol for OJ. And there was nothing I could do but shake my head and chink my glass with him and say, cheers. A door opened and in stepped a man in a beautiful suit. I'd want to say he looked like $1 million, but that would have undervalued him. He looked like something more precious than any amount of money on the planet. It was George Clooney. It was the original Silver Fox. It was the man who had made hospital scrubs and grey hair not only acceptable, but sexy. The golden voice, the smoothest man in history, the world's most eligible bachelor from about 1994 to 2014. I'd had a dream about George Clooney once. He'd been driving an old van wearing a woman's wig and pink lipstick and was trying to sell me part of a ship's engine for way more than I'd wanted to pay. And I sat there now on this couch that cost more money than I'd earned in my entire life, and I was absolutely and utterly compelled to tell him about my dream. George, I wanted to say, Mr. Clooney, this is going to sound weird, but unfortunately for me, I had enough sense to realize there was no way that was going to go well, and kept stum. Also, I was basically paralyzed into muteness by the sheer magnificence of his presence. His aura exuded charm and grace and confidence and splendor. This was my first time seeing an actual bona fide celebrity in the flesh, and I won't count Jimmy Savile or Ted Rogers or even Russell Brand and Noel Fielding, no offense. And it suddenly dawned on me that there was something fantastically different about him and his like, that it wasn't just luck or a job like any other, but that they were almost a different species to you and I. Matt LeBlanc walked in, and I listened to them chat. They were so at ease in their skins. Their minds worked ridiculously fast. They always had a quip or a compliment for the girls who passed. Did they even shit? These supermen, these ubermenches. It was impossible to imagine them wiping their arses and looking at the brown stain on the paper like we do. To imagine them hunkering down on the bowl and squeezing stubborn, painful turds out of their anuses. To think of George Clooney, trousers round his ankles, wiping blood from his bumhole and fretting about the stink, hoping it would be gone before a Mal needed to come in and make her own stink too. Did they talk about it? Did they laugh about it? Did they ever wipe their arses and then accidentally poke a finger through the paper and get a bit of shit on it, and then, though they knew better, feel unstoppably compelled to sniff it and confirm that, yes, that was a bit of shit I got on my finger, and now I'd better wipe it off, but not before I've sniffed it one more time, just to be sure, because I'm a weird human being, like all other weird human beings, and that's what weird human beings do. No, I decided that didn't happen. George Clooney did not get shit on his finger and then sniff it. He didn't do monstrous nasty turds that stunk the whole house out and took wipe after wipe and sit there frustrated thinking, won't this shit ever be gone from my asshole? I've used like half a roll here. He didn't piss on his shoes sometimes. He didn't miss the toilet. He didn't find himself halfway through the day with an itchy bumhole and then realize it was because he still had shit on there, because he hadn't given it a good enough wipe after this morning dump. George Clooney doesn't get shit on his finger because he doesn't wipe his arse, and that's because George Clooney doesn't shit. It was the only possible explanation. It sounds mad, but if you'd been there, sitting on that couch, drinking champagne and seeing what I'd seen, you'd have felt it, nay, known it, too. He was a different breed. He was so perfect and beautiful. It's such a shame what happened to him later. Though I must say, his sheer impeccability and that of Matt LeBlanc and DiCaprio and even Nicholson, who also came through later, was making me painfully aware of my own dirtiness and decrepitude. Not because I was still a little shabby from the hike, not even because my entire outfit cost less than one single fibre from a DiCaprio sock, but because of my own being, my own mind, my own me. In the shining mirror of George Clooney, I got to see all too clearly that I was a mess, and that my brain was a mess, and that my head and my life were useless. I would never be suave, I would never be sophisticated. All my quips would be dreamed up with painstaking effort hours after the opportunity had passed. All my stories would be told in stumbling, stammering ways that bored the ears off their listeners. No chat show hosts would be asking me about my holidays or my time filming with such and such. And if they did, there would be no raucous symphonies of laughter from the audience and the host and my fellow guests. It would be Graham Norton looking horrified and askance at the weirdo so clearly bucked in error and losing his marbles on his now tarnished couch. "Burn the couch," they would cry, "and burn the weirdo while we're at it." And off I'd be dragged, torn into 1,000 pieces by the howling mob, feasted on as though they were ravenous zombies, furious at the degradation and disgrace I'd wrought upon their holy of holies, the audacity of thinking myself worthy of even inhabiting the same room as a DiCaprio or a Clooney. And as if picking up on these thoughts, a very pretty woman appeared holding a robe and some slippers, and asked me if I was ready to take a bath. With you, I thought? Gee whiz, that would be wonderful. I looked at AC, and AC smiled and indicated that I should go with her. She led me through a gold-handled door and down a long corridor of doorways, and then we turned left and entered through some curtains on the right. In the middle of the room was a large, ornate tub with no visible taps and steam rising from the water. There were a couple of chairs stacked with several large towels. The walls were adorned with curtains and fabric, thick drapes of royal purple and midnight blue and gold. Suddenly it dawned on me that AC had been pulling my pud, and this was no Nevada whorehouse after all, as if that shining Clooney angel would stoop so low. It was purely and simply a secret luxury celebrity bathhouse. Of course it was. Also slowly dawning on me was the realization that the book was starting to morph into a choose-your-own-adventure story. So, what would you like to do? Chapter 20, a.k.a. number 20. You slip out of your clothes and lower yourself into the hot, bubbly waters of the bath. Ah, how good it feels on your aching bones and muscles. It seems that they must have loaded it with Epsom salts. It's like they knew exactly what you needed. And soon you feel all your pains and stiffness melt away, as if by some sort of miracle. It's not easy to do what you just did as an out-of-shape 41-year-old Yorkshireman, which is what you now are. You close your eyes and drift into a short, refreshing sleep. Give yourself +2 health points. When you awaken, you realize that someone else is there in the room with you, sitting in a chair in the far corner. Through the candlelight you can just make out their outline and a smile, but can't see well enough to discern exactly who it is. They stand from the chair and move closer to you, coming into the light. If you want it to be a pretty woman of about 49, turn to 49. If you would like it to be a man of about 56, turn to 56. If you want it to be a hell beast of about 667, turn to 98. Or, if you would like to get through the Choose Your Own Adventure section as quickly as possible, turn to 96. Now, do apologize, but I'm going to have to play this for you. And what have we got? We're going to get to the end. We can go to have a hell beast. We can have a man or a pretty woman. I'm going to go for the pretty woman, 49. 49. Well, I'll be buggered black. It's Julia Roberts. Not only are you getting to soak your bones in a really lovely bathtub, but now one of the world's most famous actresses has, for some unknown reason, appeared in your room and is looking for all the world like she's going to join you in there. What would you like to do? If you want to try and be friendly and say, "Hi, Julia," turn to 26. If you would like to ignore her and go to sleep, turn to 34. If you want to stay quiet and see what she does, turn to 101. I'm going for 101. 101. From behind her back, Julia pulls out a small bazooka and fires it at your head. The last thing you remember as you exit this world is her smiling face, blowing smoke from the nozzle and nodding satisfied at a job well done. You are dead. Turn to 63. 63. Now that you are dead and in the afterlife, you get to return to Earth and relive the entirety of your life from start to finish all over again, only this time with an increased awareness of the consequences of your actions and a more highly attuned sense of intuition due to the extra information you receive from the you that just lived. So when you should have turned left but turned right, this time your spider sense starts tingling and you go left instead. And that girl you should have kissed, you kiss her, and a whole hitherto unknown realm of experience opens up to you, and your being is substantially enriched. Strangely enough, though, despite the different and better choices you make, you still end up driving through Nevada in a Ford Bronco with AC cowlings en route to visit OJ Simpson so you can write a book all about how he masterminded 9/11. You still stop off at a strange, luxurious celebrity bathhouse, or is it a whorehouse, where you once upon a time, in some other realm, some other dimension, came a cropper and met your demise. And you still end up lying in the nice bathtub, soaking away your aches and pains. But this time you are wiser and smarter, and something in your being is whispering to you to make a different choice. You don't know where it comes from. All has been forgotten. You only know how you feel. And now is the time to tune into that. What would you like to do? If you want to inject yourself with cyanide, turn to 99. If you want to drink bleach, turn to 99. If you want to touch the wires sticking out of the box marked Danger, High Voltage, turn to 99. If you want to write a letter to Santa, turn to 99. If you want to click your heels together and travel through time, turn to 77. And if you want to enjoy the rest of your bath in peace, turn to 23. Well, don't know why, but I've got a feeling. 77. Let's go there. Click your heels together and travel through time. 77. Whoa! Everything goes swirly and groovy, and the next thing you know, you are back in 1963 and standing near some shelves on the 5th floor of the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas. A man is seated at an open window pointing a rifle. You look at your watch and note that the time is 12:29 and the date is the 22nd. Your watch, however, doesn't display month information. What would you like to do? If you want to ask the man what month it is, turn to 47. If you want to go to the 1st floor and buy a Coke, turn to 82. If you want to peruse some of the books on the shelves, turn to 68. Oh, they're all good, but 47, I think. Excuse me, you say. I know this is a weird question, but I've just travelled back in time from the distant future, and I'm wondering if you can tell me what month it is. I know the day of the month and the time. I have those on my watch, but that's as much information as I have. Sure thing, fella, the man says chirpily. It's November. But say, don't you need to know the year also? And aren't you curious who the president is? Terrible. Weirdly, you say. I already know the year. That information was provided to me by the author of the book I'm currently reading. As for who the president is, I'm not too bothered about that, what with being English and all. It's not the sort of question that would occur to me. Fair enough, he says. Then he asks, say, if you're from the future, do they got smartphones where you are? Sure do, you say. You got one? Yep, though it's kind of old by today's standards. My today, I mean. And the screen's all broke so that every time I try to type the letter A, I end up typing like A, capital A, Q, capital A, capital A, capital A, capital A, W, or something instead. But I can still check my email, my WhatsApps, watch YouTube, etc. The man shakes his head in wonder and says, Gee whiz. I tell you what, he says, I can't wait till I'm an old man and get to have a go on some of that marvelous technology y'all have in the future. Smartphones, laptops, it all seems so mind-blowing and far-fetched, but... And then, as if remembering something important, he interrupts himself and whirls back around to the window. Shoot, he says, obviously cross with himself. Gol darn it. Well, thanks for your time, you say. It was nice talking with you. You too, says the man. You take it easy. His words are cheery enough, but there's a sense of sudden dejection about him. What would you like to do? If you want to ask him what's wrong, turn to 21. If you want to say cheerio and go get a Coke, turn to 82. If you'd like to wrestle the rifle from him, race down the stairs, chase after a big dark blue car, and shoot the top off someone's head, turn to 27. If you'd like to bid him adieu and look at the books, turn to 68. I think I want to ask him what's wrong. Yeah, I'm curious. 21. You all right, fella? You say to the man. Yeah, he says, probably for the best anyway. I was in two minds, to be honest. Maybe should have listened to what my old ma told me from the get-go. What did she tell you? Don't never make important life-changing decisions while you're high on drugs, drunk out of your mind, or right after watching a powerful, emotional movie. That's pretty good advice, you say, and the man seems resolved and restored to good cheer. Well, better get back to work, he says, packing up his rifle in brown paper and pretending it's curtain rods. Nice to meet you. Good luck with getting back to the future. He walks from the room and leaves you to ponder about how you're going to return to where you belong. If you'd like to realize that the whole thing is nothing more than a weird hallucination, turn to 54. If you want to throw yourself out of the open window, turn to 63. I recognize that number. If you'd like to go and get a Coke, turn to 82. If you want to check out some of the books, turn to 68. Okay, I'm definitely ready for a Coke now. He's weirdly insistent. Third time's the charm. 82. You exit the room and find the staircase heading down, but you quickly become confused by the old-fashioned steps, so different to what you're used to, and lose your balance. Now you are tumbling over and over towards the bottom of the building, step by step, story by story. Somewhere around the first floor, you hit your head with a nasty crack and lose consciousness. The last thing you see as the world swirls around you and your eyes begin to close are the unbelievably good prices on the drinks vending machine, so near and yet so far. Turn to 63. What? We've been there already. Now that you are dead and in the afterlife, etc., etc. Okay, well, the only one... I could go back in time again. All right, I'm going to go back in time again. 77. Click my heels together and travel through time. Whoa! Everything goes swirly and groovy. And the next thing you know, you are back in 1963 and standing near some shelves on the 5th floor of the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas. A man is seated at an open window, pointing a rifle. What would you like to do? We asked him what month it was. We went to buy a Coke. Peruse some of the books on the shelves. Turn to 68. 68. You stroll down aisles of bookshelves and check out some of the titles. Mostly the shelves contain hundreds of copies of the same school textbooks. How to Count to 4, for example, or The Entire History of the Whole World, 1776 to 1962. But then you come across a small selection written by someone with the same name as you. You pick one up, a book of poetry, and read a few. Say, you nod to yourself, these are pretty good. Probably the best poems I've ever read. You read a few more and have your opinion confirmed. Then you hear 2 or 3 loud bangs. Then, somewhat surprisingly, you see a book called How I Did It Too, the terrifying true story of the real mastermind behind 9/11, or something like that. Also with your name on it, only this time as the sub-author. If you would like to find a comfortable chair and start reading the book, find a comfortable chair and turn to 1. If you would like to put it in your back pocket and save it for later, turn to 61. If you want to look inside some of the other How I Did It books, turn to 102. Okay, 102 sounds interesting. 102. Just as you're about to start reading the blurb for the 7th volume, the cover shows a picture of a cheeky-looking black man, a jagged white pyramid, and a large Edwardian-era passenger ship. You feel a painful crack on your head, presumably the butt of a rifle, and the world swirls around you as you slump to the floor. The last thing you see as you lose consciousness are a man's black shoes, the green booties of a dozen or so elves, and the evil glint in the chief elf's eye as he puts a knife to your throat and pushes it into you with a sinister chuckle and all his might. You are dead. Turn to 63. Okay, forget that. We've been there, but what was the last page? I want to... what was the other book option? Oh my God. I'm lost. I'm never going to get out of here. Books on the shelves, 68. We don't need to go back around again. Read the book. No. If you would like to put it into your back pocket and save it for later, turn to 61. Here we go. All right. 61. You put the book in your pocket and then click your heels together, and next thing you know, you are back in 2017 and standing in front of an open and unlocked door, having successfully navigated your way through a wormhole in the fabric of space-time. You check your back pocket and realize that the book is gone, and then you remember skin, bones, flesh, mucus, water, all the other things that make up a body, as well as clothes, socks, shoes, belt buckles, etc., can travel through time, but books can't. Tarnation, you say, disappointed that you'll actually have to write the rest of the book rather than just copy it. But still, at least you had the sense to read and memorize the last few pages, since they're always the hardest. And, satisfied with that, you walk through the unlocked and open door, completely forgetting that memories don't travel so well through time either. Turn to 57.